I'm surprised you haven't twigged the first word for baptism. Can you say it again?
Mamudia.
Right? It's something to do with Mahmud, Mahmudiya. So it's Mahmud is the Messiah. So the Arabic word for baptism. Well, welcome back, everyone. We have Noel here again. He's going to be discussing who were the Maltese Christians in the Norman period. The last time we met, we were discussing the Arab period, I believe. So welcome back, Noel.
Hello, thank you for having me again, man. Yes, so last time we discussed the Arab period. What evidence do we have in the literature? And today we're going to try to see what exists in the literature on who the Maltese Christians were in the Norman period. So exactly after the Arab period. And this is a very hot topic in Malta. Even newspaper articles are still being written about it as well, because it means of whether the Christians, the Norman Church, sorry, the Latin Church of today, whether it can trace its lineage back to what the church that Saint Paul founded in 60 AD, or else maybe there was a break in the Arab period and then it was reintroduced.
And of course, today is a special date in this discussion, the 10th of February.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, today is the 10th of February, in which we celebrate the shipwreck of St. Paul to Malta and therefore the beginnings of Christianity in Malta.
Excellent.
So therefore the possibilities are two. Either Christianity was preserved or else Christianity was reintroduced. And therefore what we have are three scenarios. If Christianity was preserved, then the Christian community survived in the harks back from the Byzantine period, or else if it was reintroduced, it could have been reintroduced either during the Arab period or else during the Norman period. Now, when we did the linguistic team, we saw that in Maltese there is very few Greek words, words of Greek origin. And therefore, this makes the likelihood that the Christian community harks back from the Byzantine period very unlikely. So let's see what evidence can we found of Muslim converts from the Norman period. Now, the period that we're going to focus is this, the 12th century. Yes, 12th century. We find evidence of Christian missionaries among the Maltese Muslim serfs, and we find also evidence of Maltese mosques that are converted to churches. However, according to Dalli, by and large, the Latin Church and the Norman state seemed more focused on collecting revenues than converting the Muslim populations. Since we have to remember that the Muslims are the new dhimmis instead of the Christians, and therefore they're paying the jizya instead of the Christians. So what's left is that Christianity was introduced during the Arab period. And according to Brigad, this you arrive to it logically, especially if you look at the language. Because as we saw, as we already said, the Christian terminology or words or Christian words of Greek origin are very few. And also we have basic concepts, Christian concepts are described are words of Arabic origin. Words like, for example, let me do the highlight. Words, oops, words like Allah, Addis, Mulay, Nisrani, Assis, Uddesa, Mahmudiyya, Arar, Arbin, Milit, Randan, Eight al-Kbir. These are all words of Arabic origin. So if Christianity was introduced during the Norman period, then these words shouldn't exist, right? And furthermore,
Can I interrupt you? Can I interrupt you
yes.
there for a sec? Obviously, want to jump on that word Randan. So, can we
Mhm.
assume that it is from Ramadan. Is there a
Yes,
connection?
yes, yes, yes. It
So
is
the
from
word
Ramadan.
Ramadan was originally an Arabic word for Lent that was used by
Um,
Christians, presumably.
no, we'll
No?
see later today. Randan, actually, Maltese are the only Christians which use Randan for Lent. So this is something which we'll see later on, which is a curiosity. Why is
Yeah,
there? Why is Arabic actually the Arabic? And I'm jumping a little bit the gun here, but
yeah,
why do we have the Arabic words are derived from the Islamic inventory?
yeah.
Words like Randan. Hmm.
So just to clarify, just in case there's a confusion here, what I'm asking really is, if we were to go hundreds of years back in time to Syria, say, did
Hmm.
Christians ever use that word for Lent in the Arabic language, or was it borrowed from Arabic during Muslim times, in particularly in Malta? Do you know what
Prob
you know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes, yes. Probably borrowed from Muslims. Because
Okay, so it
also
was,
most of the
yeah,
other words, like let's say, um, uh, Mamudi, Uddisa, Arar, Assis is Syriac actually. These are all words which are used as well by the Lebanese Syrian Maronites. And actually, this word, since we're talking about the etymologies of the words, this one, mulay, is, if I'm not mistaken, it's actually used, is a Maltese innovation. And it's coming from wala. If you remember in the last stream with Murad said that the word don't take as wala, and in translations they are friends, but actually he said they should be administrators. And this is also from the truth, administrator, because the Lord, God, is the administrator of all things, right? So from
yeah.
Wala we have Mulay in Maltese.
Okay.
But it is curious that, so the logic here is this. If from the language we can guess when the religion was reintroduced, right? Because if it harks back from the Byzantine period, then the terminology would be Greek. If it was introduced during the Normans, then it would be Latin. And although we have words, a lot of Christian words which are Latin, like sacrament, virtù, adorazione, spellizza, stola, artal, gandlir, tabernaculum, spiritus sancto. But still, for example, if we take the word spiritus sancto, this was not always the case that Maltese were using this word. In fact, we have another word which is ruhil odos. And there is a priest that still uses this word, ruhil odos, right? Dun Laurensin, who is a Capuchin, he still uses Ruhil Odos. So, Brinkat infers simplicitly that Christianity may well have been reintroduced during the Arab period. So, if you go to the citation, then you would see that he's not very direct, but that's the idea that you get, right?
So where did so I think we need to stay on this just a bit because
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm not clear, so I'm just because
Mm-hmm.
I'd say when I'm cloudy on something, I can't let it go. That's
Yeah,
just
sure.
the nature of me. So, if Christianity was introduced during the Arab period,
Mm-hmm.
and the other words that are used are Christian words that Arabs use, then why not Randan being a Christian word rather than coming from Islam? That's which is what I understand you saying.
Yes, yeah, this is the argument that Brinkat is saying. Yes, yeah, that's a problem. That's a
so
problem, and not everyone agrees as well with this.
okay, so Brinkat, if I'm understanding correctly,
Hmm.
he's saying all of these words are coming from Christian Arabs except for Randan.
He's not
That
even
unique,
going. He's not even going there. He's saying, look, we have these words which are of Arabic origin,
yeah,
and therefore Christianity must have been introduced during the Arab period. Because
yeah,
if they were introduced during the Norman period, they would have been of Latin origin.
Yeah.
If
Also, he doesn't
Christianity
go
was
any further.
maintained, then
Yeah.
the terminology would have been Greek.
Yeah. He's
This
not
is
going
the
any
argument.
further. Yeah,
No,
he's not
no.
going further because I think the more interesting question for me is the word Randan originally a Christian word
Yep,
or a
yep.
Muslim word? But
And even
maybe that be
eight,
something for another day.
no, it will be for today. And
Mm.
also Eitel Gbir, for example, as well. We shall see this one, this word as well. Eitel
Which
Gbir,
one?
because this one, Eitel Gbir, which is the
Okay.
same as Eitel Kabir, I think, as well in Arabic. Sorry,
Yeah.
in Islam, right?
Yeah.
So basically, in a nutshell, this is what we just said, right? That we have delved into this quite a lot. Now, Stanley and Fiorini, sorry, Fiorini and Zammit, they are not so sure about this conclusion, and therefore and also they say, like, look, there are other things that we should look about. We have some other evidence which is ignored by most, I think, in fact, academia, and even claimed to be snuffed by some. So let's look at what they have to say in more detail. And before we start with the Arab period, we have to go a little bit what was going on before. And as a premise, Fiorini starts with that due to the history of Greek, Byzantine, Sicily, and one can guess Malta as well. Due to its history, although in theory subject to the Pope in Rome, Sicily was in practice aligned with the Greek Church. And for example, he cites papal epistles to the Sicilian bishops, for example, from Leo the Great and Pope Gregory the Great, like reminding them, look, you are actually under the Pope in Rome, not under the Greek Church. And between 663 AD and 668 AD, Syracuse was considered to be Constantinople's replacement, and also we have several Byzantine patriarchs that were Sicilian, for example, Theophanes of Syracuse and Methodius of Syracuse. And also we have important Byzantine liturgical texts that were written by Sicilians. So he's citing all this to reinforce the argument that there was a strong link between Sicily and the Greek Church. He also says that in the iconoclast, because of the iconoclast controversy, one of the results was that Emperor Leo III unilaterally severed links with the Roman Church, and therefore Calabria, Ilaria, and Sicily, and one would guess Malta as well, became part of the Byzantine Patriarch overnight. And therefore, according to Fiorini, the Roman Church could not survive in this environment, and thus the Christians, under the Arab domination, were all part of the Greek Church. So, according to Fiorini, there were no Latin Christians when the Arabs arrived in Malta. Now, maybe someone should be cautioned because, to be a little bit maybe not so sure that there were no Latin, but maybe we can think that most of the church was actually Greek, or the dominant church was the Greek church. Now, if we go after the Muslim period, we have also the so-called poem Tristia ex Melito Gaudo. Now, so-called because it's untitled, okay? So it is known by this. It is an untitled Greek poem written by an unknown poet. This poet was exiled for some reason to Audesh, to Gozo, and was making a case for his return back to Sicily. What is also interesting is that at the same time, there was another poet, Abd al-Rahman ibn Ramadan, who was in Palermo, writing poems in Arabic, pleading with King Roger II to return to Malta. So we've got two poets, one in Audish, in Gozo, writing in Greek to the king, pleading with him or making a case for him to return to Sicily. And on the other hand, you've got the Maltese poet writing, well, presumably Maltese, right? Because he wanted to return back to Malta, writing in Arabic, pleading with King George II to return to Malta. This poet, the Greek poet, he was not very happy. He was describing, he was saying, these children of the godless Hagar, godless, of course, not because they were atheists. And he described that he had to live with their repugnant customs, unjust arrogance and insolence, hunger, thirst, seizure of belongings, and especially interesting, repulsive customs like sleeping on mats. And he was also, he couldn't drink wine and he couldn't sing the sacred hymns. And
It's
also
interesting.
yeah, he continues as well because, and here is where it's the meat and potatoes, let's say, of the poet, of the poet. And he describes, he says, the most resplendent leader of all leaders. And this could be none other than King Roger II. And he also describes that he went to the other island, to Audesh, with a small naval expeditionary force. So this is not some like a big invasion. He was just going there to reassert his authority on the people of Audesh, on Gozo. And we know that he went to Audace and not Malta because he writes Melito Gaudos. And this is very specific. And also the authors, Fiorini and Vella, they say, look, Melito Gaudos, actually, it's Audace. And also we know that Saint Paul came to Malta and not to other islands because of this way of this Greek way of writing in the in the text, right? They would say if it was Malta, it would be something like Gaudo Melita.
Yeah.
And he also continues these inhabitants invoking only the hierarch, which is like the founder of all heresies, the all abominable Muhammad. He banished, so they are Muslims, right? So they're invoking Muhammad. He banished, he meaning King Roger II, he banished from their country their chefs with all their households and their black slaves, not indeed a few. He, on the other hand, brought out into the open the pious inhabitants of the place together with their bishop. So a church which was hidden came out into the open. Who have departed from the pact of old, got rid of the indeed hated things by which they used to invoke Muhammad. And here he's talking about the Muslims that were expelled, not all of them, of course, like the sheikhs. He then established into the most sacred temples places formerly belonging to the most hated Modibbi, sacred and useful priests who were worshipping the Holy Trinity from ancestral times.
Can you explain that word mudibi?
I don't know what it means, to tell you the truth. I tried to search for it, but I don't know what it means.
Is it
One presumes that it
referring to
means,
Muslims?
yeah, exactly, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's interesting that he calls them like that, Mudibbi.
Yeah, it's
So,
interesting. Also, he refers to Muhammad as a heresy arc, which
mhm.
you know you can only say that of someone presumably if they're within the fold of Christianity or perhaps maybe
No, no,
Judeo-Christian Christianity.
exactly. Just a few 2 weeks ago, I think I found a really interesting book about heresies, and the
Yeah,
preface was this: you cannot have a, a heresy if you're talking about your religion if you don't consider them part of your religion.
yeah, interesting. Yeah,
And so, therefore, this Christian community could not have been planted by Roger the First because there is evidence that um, in Audish, Gozo, the Christians, even if subjugated, managed to survive the hated Arab colonization.
yeah,
Now, so Roger II found the Christians in bondage and suffering, as Fiorini and Zamid continue, right? So if we have to look at the two lines, we've got the first line is when the King Roger I came to Malta and made the Arabs here, vassals of the Norman kingdom. And the second line is when his son, Roger II, King Roger II, came to Malta to reassert his authority. And therefore, Ruffiarini and Sabni, they conclude that they must have been Greek Rite Byzantine Church Christians from the Muslim period. We have also to remember that Pope Nicholas II gave a brief to the Normans to return abandoned churches to the Latin Church, so they couldn't have been abandoned churches and then they were given to the Greeks because of this brief. And therefore, the Greek Rite Church could not have been planted by the Normans. And we have more evidence of the Greek Church. For example, we have evidence that Protopapas Nicolaus and his wife, they died in the early 13th century. And also near in the end of the 13th century, we have signatures in Greek of Maltese public document and notarial documents as well.
Yeah.
There was also reports by Latin bishops that in Audish, in Gozo, marriage was practiced in the Orthodox rites. So we have other evidences, right? If you focus, the canon structure was more similar in Audish. We're talking always on the other islands. The canon structure is more similar to the Greek church. The parish structure is more similar to the Greek church. And one has to remember that still by 1575, 95% of churches in the Maghreb and Sicily, and therefore one can assume in Malta too, were dedicated to the pre-Islamic saints, and a lot of them coincided with the Byzantine calendar. And local devotions as well to Eastern saints like Saint Basil. And we have also feasts which are according to the Byzantine rite only. So, for example, the feast of Sanchir, it's done according to the Byzantine rite. There are no other rites that celebrate on this day as well, and which is celebrated in Malta as well. It's interesting as well. Septlazru, this one, wait, this one here, Septlazru is also in accordance only with the Byzantine rite, and also Fiorini describes this one, Uccia, which is that is recorded in 1436, is a funeral Greek ritual. Now, Uccia today, if you open any Maltese book about Maltese traditions, or actually even if you do the tradition, it's something that has to do with newborns. So it's interesting that in the 15th century, it was something that had to do with death rather than newborns. Now we can also see how this Maltese Greek church declined. We can kind of have an idea of the decline. So we have in the early 13th century a tetra evangelion donated to Malta by Michael Autorenos in Constantinople, who later became the Patriarch Michael IV Autorenos of the Byzantine Church. Now, the Tetraevangelion is basically they are the canonical gospels of the four evangelists. And it is the Greek parallel of the Latin Evangelistarium. Now, in Maltese, for those that are interested, at that time it was also called L'Libro di Santo Paolo. And the question arises: if there was no Greek church in Malta, why would this very important person, who later became the patriarch, actually donate this important liturgical text to Malta? We can also see that the inventory of the Church of Sancta Maria in Castro Anteriori, which is where today is Birgu for the Maltese people, which is where the soldiers were stationed. Right? That's one of the major strong points, let's say, especially there in that period. And from this inventory, we can deduce that most of the people there in near the harbor were Latin. Um, Sometime later, we have evidence that the Latin cathedral in Mdina seems to be under construction. And then later, in the uh, beginning of the 15th century, we start to see a gradual shift from Greek to Latin because the four witnesses that were authenticating the copy of the Tristiax Melitogaudos, the um, poem that we talked about before, the four witnesses were two Latin priests, a Greek deacon, and a Greek notary, son of a Greek priest. So here we're seeing a gradual Latinization, and also the conclusion that Fiorini concludes is that there was a Latin church in the Castrum Maris in well, today is the Forte Sant'Angelo, to cater for the foreign soldiers and their families, but the Maltese probably belonged more to the Greek church. But slowly, slowly, this started to change. And finally, the Tetra Evangelion was sent to Messina for archiving in the mid 15th century because there was no longer need for it in Malta, so it was archived. And also, we can see this Latinization process. We can see parallels in Sicily and also in Pantelleria. Now, there is also another interesting thing which we have to look at, parameter in the equation, which we have to look at, which is the Gallic rite. Um, in Christianity, there are different rites, the Byzantine, the Roman, the Mozarab, the Gallic, etc. And Fiorini um, makes this hypothesis, let's say, that the Gallic rite, which was kind of helped in the maintaining of the Byzantine elements of the Greek church in Malta. So he says that there were three phases of liturgical rites in Malta. We've got the phase one, which was the Greek Orthodoxy, the phase two, which was the Greek Orthodoxy, phase two, because in 1530s the knights came. The knights brought with them a retinue of Rhodesians, which were part of the Greek church. Um, and then on top of that, we've got the Gallican rite. Now, therefore, um, also we have to remember that in the wider regional context, the pressure from the Ottomans induced a migration of members of the Greek Church to South Italy and finally to Malta as well. And therefore, we can conclude that the influence of the Byzantine Church persisted in Malta well into the 18th century.
One question I would have
Yes.
there is you're using the term Greek Orthodoxy. Now, there's a separated Church of the East, but there's also the Church of the East that wasn't separated. Can we assume that this was the separated church? That,
Still under the Patriarch.
yeah, but you understand that in 1054 the Latin Church and the Orthodox Church
Yes.
split.
Yes,
So
yes, yes,
my
yes.
question is, like, it's not like a small matter if say the Christians on Malta move to the other side, as it were. It'd be like, I don't know, Catholics
No,
become
no, we're not, we're
Protestants.
not, we're not talking that. No, by as we saw in the previous slide, by the 15th century, most of the people by that time were by the 15th century they were Latin, right? They were under the Latin rite, let's say, under the Pope in Rome, and they were not part of the Greek Church. So they had moved from the Greek to the Roman, but
Yeah,
elements still remained. This
yeah,
is what Fiorini is saying.
yeah. So actually, it sounds like they did, because there have been Greek there is a Greek church which is always united to the Latin church, and then there's
Yes,
one that's
yes, yes, yes,
separated.
yes,
But yeah,
yes, 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 yes.
you didn't. It isn't clear to me which it is in, whether it's a separated
I
Greek
under well,
Christians or
no,
not.
he's talking the article. When you read the article, you get the impression that he's talking of the not of the Greek Catholics, which are the Greek rite, but under the Pope, the
Yeah,
Latin Pope, but under the Patriarch and under
yeah.
the
Oh, okay.
Patriarch. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And what helped to maintain these elements were two factors. One, the Gallic rite, so the box on the top,
Mm.
which had elements of both. And
Right.
also the second one was the phase two, which kind of gave the church a boost because the Knights of Saint John, they were fighting with the Greeks,
Yeah.
and they were gradually pushed out. Finally, they were pushed out from Rhodes, and when they came to Malta, they brought even with them, for example, the Damascena, it's called the icon that was first painted in Damascus. Then it was found, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember the story correctly, it was found floating in the sea as a miracle. Then finally they brought it with them to Malta. Then even in the Second World War, the church was bombed, but the church of the Greeks, the Greek church in Malta, the church was bombed, but what survived was this icon still, and then the church is rebuilt
Yeah.
and it's still there.
Yeah.
So, mhm. But now what I have to say is that now that the Greek church is under the Pope in Rome
Yeah. Yeah.
today. So, the Gallican Rite. The Gallican Rite, to understand a little bit more how it helped maintain certain elements of the Greek Church, it emerged in Gaul between the 6th and the 8th centuries. Then, as part of Charlemagne's reforms, he said, okay, no more different rites, we are going to adopt the Roman Rite. But by that time, the Gallican Rite had influenced the Roman Rite in certain elements. And Fiorini says that this mixture of Roman liturgy infused with Gallican prayers was important from Normandy to South Italy and Sicily. And therefore, Malta probably entered during the brief Angevin period, when the first attempts at Latinizing the Maltese church are documented. So we have an overview. This is what we can see that when it started, right, in here. So let's start when the Angevin period that Fiorini is talking about, when the Gallican Rite when there were efforts by the Angevins to Latinize the population, the Greek population. It was in this period, and this is the Gallican period. Now, if we focus to the end of the Gallican period, right, in the end of or beginning until the mid 16th century, we find that the Gallican Missal is in Messina, Gallical texts in Malta were copies made in Messina. Oopsie. And also in 1575, there was an attempt by the apostolic visitor to Siena, who found vestiges of the Gallican Rite, and he claims that he has snuffed these out. So we're talking about vestiges of the Rite. So there were efforts before to kind of align everyone with the Roman Church, with the Roman Rite.
Yeah. It'd be very interesting to explore how the Gallican Rite compared with the Latin Rite. It'd be just curious
Mhm.
but it's probably nothing major. But it's just a localization of the overall rite that was too
Yes,
maybe
it
diverted.
would have like a bit of this, a bit of that, and overlaps, and this is why it would help preserve certain things because we say, ah, we're doing it in the Gallican rite, right? So the Gallican elements that are found in Malta are devotions to Santa Mater, triple immersion, weighing of the infants, and celebrating of saints according to the Gallican calendar rather than the Roman calendar. And some of these traditions and celebrations have survived to this day, right?
Just on the way in the infants, it actually rings bells with me. Uh, Down through the centuries, there was a concept of weighing souls. That was the concept of heaven and hell, that the soul is weighed. So it's interesting to have the weighing of the infants. I wonder if there's a parallel, there's a connection there, or maybe it's just, maybe there's no connection at all.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, but I'm not sure, if I'm not mistaken, these two, they are in the Byzantine Church, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I like the idea that the heavier the baby, the more the mother has to donate.
Yes, yes, yes,
It's
yes. This is the custom that the
yeah.
heavier the baby, the more that the donation that she has to give to the priest.
It's probably a good way of determining if the baby's from a wealthy family. If the baby weighs a good bit, it's probably been it's bit well nourished. Yeah.
So anyway, what he concludes is that thus it is, we have to paraphrase here. Um, Malta's history, ecclesiastical history, draws from three main traditional strands that kind of are intertwined, right? The Greek, the Roman, and the Gallican. And because of the Gallican, certain elements of the Greek tradition were able to infiltrate the Roman tradition, so the Roman liturgy. This is the important conclusion.
Yeah.
So therefore, now if we look again at the scenarios, there, the scenario that the Christian community remained hark back from the Byzantine period, at least in our days goes so, now is very strong because of what we saw from the poem Tristex Melito Gaudos, from we saw from if you look at the parish structure, the story of the Tetra Evangelion, and also the Gallic Rite as well. Now, however, the problem of the Arabic words then remains, right? So, why are there few Greek words then, and most of them are in Arabic? So these are the two complications. That is the first complication, and the second complication is why are Maltese, which should be Christian, but they're named Muhammad right until the 15th century. So what is going on here? So let's go first to the first complication, which is the vocabulary. Now, if you look at Maltese Christian vocabulary, we have two sources, right? One is Lebanon-Syrian Maronite, and the other one is Islamic. So let's look at the maybe less interesting, the Lebanon-Syrian Maronite. So, words which are shared with the Lebanon Syrian Maronites are Mahmudiyya, Tunisia, Rar, Fraiha, Tauba, Kursiya, and Kursiya. Then we have words which are found all over the Mediterranean, according to Wettinger, for example, even in Spain. Words like Mahmudiyya, Udisa, Assis, and Ruhul Odos. Now, Ruhul Odos is, which is the Holy Spirit. Now, Ruhul Odos is very interesting because I found it in Wikipedia, so we have to keep it in mind. But Ruhul Odos is attested first in the Quran, in Arabic, right? And this is coming from the Greek, a transliteration of the Greek, according to Wikipedia.
Um, I'm surprised you haven't twigged the first word for baptism. Can you say it again?
Mahmudiyya.
right? It's something to do with Mahmud, Mahmudiya. So Mahmud is the Messiah. So the Arabic word for baptism. Now the Iya, I'd love to know what the that part is, but I think that I don't know if you realize that this is connected to Mahmud, but it certainly sounds it. Maybe I'm mistaken, but it's certainly sounds like Mahmud.
But the problem I think is that there is no H, right? So it's a nine. In Arabic, I think it would be more like Mahmudiyya, something like this. It's
I
not.
I I think we kind of have to keep kind of at this kind of wide open
Yeah,
because the way
for,
language can go all over the place because like
for sure.
Mahmud went into all sort of it was Mahmed, Mahmud, Mahmad. It went in all different directions. Any idea about the ia? Like when you find ia in a word, what does that tend to indicate? Is there any words like that in other words in Maltese with ia?
Hmm, I have to think.
Yeah,
I have to
yeah.
think.
This could be something that I could talk to.
Sbuhiyya. Sbuhiyya, it's coming to my mind. It's coming from
Yeah,
sabih. So it's
yeah.
kind of an adjective. Let
Okay.
me just check a bit the dictionary for 1 second. Let me see now that we're talking about this.
So it's an adjective, yeah, because it kind of like um so it'd be kind of like we say christened, right? Christened.
Yep.
Why do we say christened? Because it's Christ. Christ is the Greek word for Messiah. Here we have another word for Messiah, Mahmud, and it's basically the equivalent of christened, except they're focusing on Mahmud. Do you see?
Yeah, yeah, I know. I know what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I think this is huge, man. I don't know if you realize it.
No, no.
Maybe I'm wrong. And it's possible I'm maybe seeing too much in this, but
Yeah, the only
if
thing I
this,
think is that it's a nine and not an H. So, but let me just
yeah,
check.
well, it's like even in the former word can sometimes change. Like if you think about
Mm-hmm.
we say christened in English, which isn't we don't say Christianized when we talk about being baptized. We say christened. So even there, it's tweaking it a little bit. So I don't know. I have a sneaking suspicion that this is way too close for to be just a mere coincidence. Because it's an unusual word if you think about it for baptism. Um, I challenge anyone to suggest an alternative meaning in terms of etymology. Where does the word come from? Um, so you pronounce it again, Mahmudia,
Mahmudiyya. Mahmudiyya.
Mahmudia,
But because
Mudia.
in Maltese, in modern Maltese, we don't pronounce the ain.
Yeah,
So in Arabic, I think it would be if you would read it, it would be more like Mahmudiyya, something like that.
Muni. Yeah,
Let
yeah,
let's just 1 second.
yeah.
K.
Because Mahmud would be spot on.
Um,
So
sorry.
in terms of you weren't able to find it in the dictionary.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. No, it's in the dictionary. It's just saying that Mahmudiyya is coming from the verb Ahmed, and which
Yeah.
means to baptize. I think we need to go into an Arabic dictionary for that because what I was searching for was in the Maltese dictionary, which is just
Oh,
saying words from where they're coming.
did you just say it comes from Ahmad?
Ahmed.
Yeah, because that sounds like the root for the word Mahmed, if I'm not mistaken. It's basically another way of saying the Messiah you know.
It's because in Arabic, if you want to, you can الميمات, right? So if you have a verb, you can if you put an M in front, then it becomes from a verb, it becomes a noun. So Ahmed
Yeah,
is the verb, and then you can say Mahmudiyya, then it becomes a noun.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah,
yeah, I think it's interesting, and we should
yeah.
look at
I'll
it
bring
further. But
we'll get
my only
Senur out
worry
on
is
the
that
job.
Yeah. My only worry is that it's an Ain and not an H. Because if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken, Mahmoud is an H.
yeah. The thing is, the, you were saying that the Ein was there, but the Maltese dropped the pronunciation of the Ein. Maybe the Ein was introduced, and maybe the original wasn't there. The
No,
Ein,
no, no.
maybe.
The Ain is something that was dropped about 200 years ago. In fact, there is actually a dialect in Audish from Arab
Yeah,
that still pronounce the Ain. They would say this one. They would say it more like Mamghudi, probably something like that. Mamghudiyya.
yeah,
Mahmudiyya.
yeah.
Sorry, because I have to remember how they pronounced it.
But
So, for example, Audish,
that's
they would say Gaudish, let's say.
yeah. But there's but I always hold out the idea that it could have been that the Ein was introduced centuries after the word was introduced, and then it was dropped out again because
Uh-huh.
these can change over time. Words get extended and then they get contracted, and all sort of funny
Mhm.
things happen. But
Yeah,
okay,
it can be, but dropping the ein is not something. I mean, it happened with all the language in
mm,
Malta with all the words, or
yeah,
with most of them anyway, because we have gargur, for example, in which we still pronounce it with a G, right?
yeah,
And it should and we write it with an ein.
yeah,
But most of them it was dropped, and we know when it was dropped. It was dropped about 200 years ago.
yeah.
Yeah, which
Okay,
we will do in the last episode of this.
all right. Okay, so we'll continue on.
Hmm. And finally, we have also milit, right? It's an Arabic word, which is uh, uh, which is used by which means birthday in Arabic. But the Arab Christians they say Eid al-Malad, which is Christmas, and whereas in Maltese we have kept only the last bit.
Okay, that word rings a bell. Wilad. Is there not a word wilad
Wilt,
in Arabic?
yeah, it means offspring or child actually.
Yeah,
Walad is
child,
child.
child. Yeah. Okay.
Now, if we look at the words that are used in the Maltese Christian vocabulary that are derived from the Islamic um, uh, um, the Islamic words, let's say. For example, as we saw before, Lent, right? So the Christian
Mm,
Arabs they call it As-Sawm al-Kabir, but in Maltese it's Ramadan, which is like the Muslim Shahar Ramadan.
yeah.
But we also have Vespers. Now, what you say is that so the Vespers in Maltese are called La'asar, and it's very similar to Salat al-Asr. And he says that the Christian Arabs have no comparison. But I don't know, I found it a little bit odd that the Christian Arabs don't have a comparison for the Vespers. And when I ran it through ChatGPT, ChatGPT said that there are Salat al-Ghurub and also Salat al-Masa. So
Yeah.
probably there. But as you can see, Maltese term for the Vespers aligns very much closer to the Muslim term.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. Very good.
Now we have also Easter. So Easter in Islam we have it Al-Kabir al-Light, and the Maltese is the inverse, Eid al-Kabir, right? And
Mm,
according to Agius, the Christian Arabs they say Eid al-Qiyamah or Eid al-Fasuh. Now Eid al-Qiyamah to me rings a bell because the Maltese we have, I remember Yom al-Awmian. But also, I'm not sure about what he's saying, Kajus here, because if you remember from the linguistic team, Al-Jalad cites Blanc, who had Eat Leg Beer, I think, or Eat Leg Big, probably, Eat Leg Big,
mm.
probably, which It's
Yeah.
close to Easter, and this is Christian Baghdadi. This is the point, that it's Christian Baghdadi. So maybe
Yeah.
it's not only the Maltese that have Eid al-Kbir for Easter, right? But
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
similar with the Muslim in any case.
Yeah.
Now we have other curious similarities. For example, Islamalik, right? We even have prayers to Mary, for example. Islamalikum Natal Grazia, for example. Uh, Greeting parallel to the Islamic Assalamu alaikum. And Agius, he said that in Lebanon, Aleppo, and in certain villages, the Christian Arabs don't like to use this, and instead they say Allah Ma'ak, which is God is with you. This is
Ah,
very
okay.
interesting. Eva, Maltese, which means in all of the Arab world, they say Naam, right? Especially in standard Arabic. In dialects, you may find it Eva or Ewa. But in Maltese, we only have Eva or Ewa. We don't know the word Naam, at least in modern times. Now, this word comes uh, Islam, right? Which is I wa Allah, which is yes by God. And
Yeah.
he's saying that the Christian Arabs, at least in Lebanon and Syria, they don't like to use it. Or its derivatives, right? Eva or like this, or Iowa. But but they just use or prefer to use Nam instead.
Yeah.
Now, in Wikipedia as well, this one is we have to be careful here because it's Wikipedia. Um, they also said that in Maltese we have from Vassalli we have Sidna Isa, which is the Islamic Isa, right? And they say that Sidna Isa is a translation for Dominus Noster Jesus. And Vassalli continues that I don't exactly understood this sentence, but he says that although for him this use is chiefly that of the Saracens, so possibly Muslims, the name actually they're using it wrong and it should refer to Joshua. Now, this guy Vassalli, Michel Anton Vassalli, was not only someone who was a teacher of Arabic, but he also was of Chaldean. So he knew his Arabic quite well. Right?
Yeah.
And in Wikipedia, we have this strange thing that also we have a derived term from Isa, which is the toponym, the Maltese toponym Ben Isa. And if you enter on the Wikidata of Ben Isa, it means Ben Isa, which means offspring of this sea, which is, I don't know, very confusing. But I put it here just in case the people want have more information, or they can go to Wikipedia or actually to Wiktionary.
Mm.
Um, this is the end of the kind of the vocabulary. Now we go to the other complication, which is that until the 15th century, many Maltese still had Arabic names such as Hakim, Hafaride. Now, I don't know how Wettinger was writing this to be pronounced, right? So I don't know if it's Sharan, if it's writing in Maltese, or if it's writing in English. So because if it's in Maltese, it would be Shara. If it's in English, it would be maybe Xara. I don't know. Kutiti or Utiti, Mahanuch, Mohtar, and this is what is interesting for us, Muhammad. So until the 15th century, we have Christians in Malta that are named Muhammad. And we can see that is the difference, right? Late in the
Yeah.
15th century,
Can I?
sorry, this is when the Muslims were expelled, right? 12, about mid 13th century. And by the 15th century, we still have Christians which are named Muhammad.
Yeah. Can I just clarify? Are you certain that the vocalization was Muhammad and not Mahmed or Makmate or any other version?
We have a screenshot. So,
Yeah.
because he says, because in the first paragraph, let me put the citations because this is important, right? In the first paragraph, sorry, in the first article, or the older article in 1983, he says, Ta Muhammad, which is a toponym, and it is an Arab name used as surname in Malta as late as the 15th century. But then
Mm.
in 1986, he says in his article about Malta and the Arab period, he says that Malta still had numerous persons with the names of obvious Arabic origin which died out in the next century or so. And he's talking about then the 16th century. And
Yeah,
as you can see here, the example is Muhammad,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So there are these. So we have these two complications, right? And we'll try to solve them in the next episode when we look at what was going on in Norman Sicily.
That's brilliant. Thanks a million, Noel, for this very interesting video. Lots of interesting things brought up that I'll have to go away and think about it and try and make sense of it. So thanks a million, and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you.